Can hear you clear enough. You're
Okay.
clear. Clear like a bell. Sure. So let's see if anybody is joining. It's saying it's connecting. So let's see what happens. Connecting away. Like, come on. Connect, connect, connect. There we go. We're now live. Here we go. Just waiting for one person to turn up and then we will go. Here we go. We got people turning up. So let's start. So, welcome everybody. This is going to be a podcast format with Andrea, the beautiful and wonderful Andrea. And what I'll do is I will count us to one, two, three, because remember, this is not going to be a typical live session where you ask questions, but a podcast session where we're going to find out the wonderful world of Andrea. And it is wonderful for sure. See, look at that smile. You know, when she smiles, it's sunshine. What a day and what a podcast it's going to be. So here we go. So it's one, two, three. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another wonderful day and another wonderful podcast with another beautiful lady called Andrea Hoffman. Andrea Hoffman, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm nervous, but I'm excited.
Really? I know, funny enough, I'm usually not nervous myself, but for some reason, and the reason being, listeners, the reason why I think I'm nervous is because we're doing a live Substack. So, yes, it's a podcast, but within Substack, doing it live. So, we're learning away. So, let us start. So, Andrea, I'm going to say the boring thing I say every single time on the podcast. So, what do you do to help people be successful on your wonderful journey?
So, what do I do to help people be successful? I think I disarm people from all the fear that they may have because I talk about the mess that is always my life every day. And I think people relate to that. And they feel like, well, if she's fumbling through, then maybe I can as well. For example,
Mm.
about 18 minutes ago, I got a call from my daughter's school that she needed to be picked up immediately for a
Uh-huh.
medical reason. And I was like, what? And I'm like, oh, off I went to get her, driving like an absolute maniac to get back here. And this is why I call my publication What Are the Chances? Because 179 other days of the year, she's never needed to be picked up in an emergency. But today, today she did. Of course. What are the chances?
Well, the thing is, it shows how resilient you are. I mean, the thing is, a lot of things happen to us, but it's what you do in the situation that shows how effective you are in being successful, right? So it's there to test us, Andrea. It's there to test us, for sure.
It's. I think God laughs at me. I think I'm his comic relief.
He laughs with you, not at you.
Right, right. With me.
Exactly. So, as a business, what do you do to help people with your business? What exactly is it that you do?
So I've been a professional corporate copywriter for longer than 25 years, which is horrifying to say, but it's true. I started out doing financial services copywriting, which is just as exciting as it sounds, and then I ended up ultimately opening my own freelance agency and taking on clients in all sorts of different industries, different size
Mm-hmm.
businesses, even individual entrepreneurs who are just getting started. So I
Mm-hmm.
am essentially a storyteller, and I like to say that whether you're selling a widget or a car, a hamburger, whatever it is, you're always selling to an audience that's a human being that is driven by emotions, that is, trying to, either deal with somebody that they have to make happy or a budget that they have to abide or something. So at the end of the day, I try to tell persuasive stories to sell things to people when they need it. And now what I'm doing is I'm pivoting away from that a little bit. I mean, I am still accepting clients and all that kind of good stuff because, bills. But I have found Substack in the last 4 months. And for the first time in my life, I'm writing things that I want to write. I'm talking about things that I want to talk about. And I'm getting that like instant feedback from readers, and I'm able to give instant feedback to other writers. And it's been so incredible I mean, I've probably written thousands of brochures and websites and billboards and all that stuff. And not once have I ever had someone say to me, thank you, or wow, that touched me, or me too. So now I'm like so high on that feeling of instant reaction from people. And even people that say it's not great, even people that are like, why did you write that? Tell me what you hated. Like, let me learn from this experience. So I feel like for the first time ever, I've had the license to write from my heart rather than from a creative brief, you know?
And it is nice when you get feedback, and I tend to, when I do ask for feedback myself, the last thing I want to be able to hear is the positive feedback, because the thing is that we tend to know what we're good at, right? But we
Hmm.
don't really want to hear what we're bad at, how we can
True.
improve,
It's true.
So it's nice to get any type of feedback because it's you don't want it to be one biased way where it's all good, right?
100%.
Because
You only learn from the
exactly.
failures. You only learn from the mistakes,
Aha!
you
Aha,
know?
I like
It's
you. It's
true.
true.
It's
It's
true.
true. And this is why I always look forward to failures. Because without the failures and understanding what you have to learn from the failures, you cannot achieve. So
Exactly.
it's all a process. You've got to learn to fall as fast as possible. So I'm really glad you've got that mindset where you love that feedback, positive or negative, and you found the format actually that really works for you. So now you found the format and you can actually work with people to do with your copyright, but in a way that resonates well for you, where it speaks to you. You've actually, I take it, found your tribe. So not only are you doing what you love, but you found people that love the way you do it. Is that correct?
I hope so. I mean, it's been a wild couple of months. In the beginning, I really feel like I was experiencing some exponential growth that I didn't know
Mm,
was unusual because I was a rookie to Substack. I'd never been here before, really. If I'm
mhm.
honest, I kind of had it confused with Reddit. I didn't
Oh,
know
did you?
I didn't
How?
know what it was at all.
Hold on,
So
hold on, hold on. Let's go back a bit. How did you confuse it with Reddit? Let's break this down.
I really never used Reddit and I never used Substack, and in my
Ah,
brain, I
I
somehow just
figured it
thought
out.
they were the same thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
get that.
I was never on Medium, so all these people that have been coming to Substack for Medium, they're all new to me. So
Yeah,
I just feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose all the time with all these amazingly talented writers that I just want to read everything all the time.
yeah.
And I really just feel like in the beginning of my Substack journey, I was absolutely adamant about not taking any advice from anybody. I did not want to hear from a guru, a growth coach, anything. I don't want to know anything about anything. I'm just going to write what I feel like
Mhm,
writing, head
mhm,
down, not
mhm.
doing anything that anybody else is telling me. Because what I found is I spent a year on Instagram. I was a very late adopter to Instagram. I
Uh-huh.
went on about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, and I spent a year in Instagram absolutely failing miserably because Instagram isn't really a platform for words, right? It just
Yeah,
isn't. And
yeah.
I could not fit that square peg in a round hole. And
No.
I was miserable. I hated every
Uh-huh,
minute of it. It was
uh-huh,
terrible. But the best part of it is that I met a girl named Jennifer who said, we're both writers and we are both kind of having the same experience. And she said, I would read you on Substack. And I said, what's Substack? And that's
uh-huh.
Jennifer Schmidt. Thank you so much if you're out here listening. She's the one who had me come over and explore what Substack was. And a few days after I landed here, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a pub. And I called it "What Are the Chances?" because I felt like, what are the chances it could be any worse than what I was doing on Instagram? Like, I can't
Yeah.
fail worse. So I had nothing to lose. And so I started just head down writing what I felt like writing, and I guess it started resonating with people. And then around November, the beginning of November, I
Uh-huh.
flatlined. There was no growth. No, I don't know if it was because of the political season in the US and everybody was just all, had their tights in a wad about all the things, but
Uh-huh.
it was dead. And I was like, wow, I haven't changed anything. And yet I went from growing to not. And then I
Right.
said to myself, I'm changing nothing. I'm just going to keep doing exactly what I'm doing because this was never about following someone else's blueprint. I'm still just
Yeah.
going to write the things that I
Of
want to write.
course.
And people have kind of come back into it, and the growth has kind of started again. But what ended up happening is when I started What
Mhm.
Are the Chances, it was really just personal essays, and I really just wanted to like talk about all the strange things that happened to me. But then I realized that as a middle-aged Gen Xer, I
Mhm.
also want to talk about all the women things, like, all the things that happen to you in midlife that no one has prepared you for. And I'm sure this is not what you want to talk about right now, but I just felt like if it's crazy and it's happening to me, I'm sure it's happening to other people. So I started a secondary publication called Can We Talk About This? And that's
Uh-huh.
where the ladies come in and we can really have the conversations that nobody warned us about, the things that we were going to need to know about, or the things we were going to experience all in our own ways, and we can just talk about that really honestly. So that's a community that I'm building separate from What Are the Chances. So it's
Well,
been very exciting. It's like
I'm
scary
telling
and
you.
crazy and energetic and kinetic and all the things. So I've been having a good time.
Well, the main thing is that you're enjoying yourself because you really don't want to be, creating content for other people and creating content for other companies and etc. And you're not enjoying it yourself because if you're going to be working, you know, during the day most of the time and you're miserable, it's not the way to do it.
No.
So I'm glad that even though you said that you flatlined, you still did what you do best. And I think that's always the best way to do things because people need people that are authentic. If you're going to copy someone else that's very popular, but they're never going to go with you, they're always going to go with the person who's the original, right?
Yep.
So
I
you might
totally
as
agree.
well do what you do is best because you're always going to find people that are going to resonate with you, right? You're
Yep.
not trying to be an Amazon. You're not trying to,
Mm-mm.
have a billion followers. You just need that, quality followers that you resonate with and you can have fun with while you're working at the same time.
Yep.
I think you did the right thing, and that's why you're having fun, right? Because you did what you did was
And
best for you.
And I have met some of the most amazing people. I now have a collection of other writers. We're collaborating on some things. We have things in the works, and it's just been like I never would have met these people, and they're amazing and they're inspiring and they're like me and not like me, and somehow we just like feed off of each other, and it's been so nice. But also I've met people who are just readers and they don't have any intention of writing, and they just want to read the things that resonate with them somehow, or pass it along to someone in their family that it resonates with, or whatever it is. So
Mhm,
it's been an
mhm.
unexpected twisty turny journey, and I expect that it will continue to be unexpected. The
Of
only
course.
thing that I can really prepare myself for is that I have no idea where I'm going with this. But I'm loving it so far, and I think what I've come to is through feedback from different people that have read my stuff and so forth. I really feel strongly about helping people tell their story, because there are a lot of people who think they don't have a story, and they absolutely do have a story. They just
Mhm,
don't know how to structure it necessarily.
mhm,
And
mhm,
whether they want to do something with that story is irrelevant.
mhm,
It's grandparents who want to have the story for their grandkids, or
mhm.
it's people who just want to feel like something they've done matters in some way, or they can record
Of
it in some
course.
way. And I really would like to help people find their stories because they exist. Everyone has stories. Everyone has many
Yeah.
stories.
No, you're totally right. I mean, I've always been a person that's hated writing with a passion. It's only because I'm dyslexic, to be honest. Um, and Substack has been painful for me. I must admit, I felt like I came home when I came to Substack. All right, because you can do so many things in one place, and I like simplicity. And writing has been very, very difficult. But pain is very important. You have to when you're uncomfortable. Sometimes that's the place where you've got to go to grow.
Hmm.
So I've
That's
been
why I'm here
attacking.
right now. I'm
Uh,
terrified to be on camera. So I'm like,
uh,
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing all the scary
well,
things.
Well, the thing is, like the camera now, I have no problem with. I did a couple of years back, but no problem. But now I'm in your position when it comes to writing, so that's good. It's making me grow. I'm actually learning a lot, and etc. But what I want to find out is where does your passion come from when it comes to copywriting? If you look way back in the days, has it always been a thing for you, or did it become a thing at a specific time?
So I think about this a lot because I have two daughters of my own, one of whom is a natural born writer, and one who is more math inclined. And I have two nephews. one of who he struggles with reading because of dyslexia and so forth, and the other one who's just naturally going to be a reader. You can see it already, even though he's very young. And I think about it sometimes with myself, and for me, I think I just come from a long line of storytellers. I had a grandfather who came to America from Greece. He didn't know exactly how to connect with his kids and discipline them. So what he would do instead was record stories of little Johnny on cassette tapes. And all the little Johnny stories were the lessons he needed the kids to learn that they might not have paid attention to if he had said it to them. But when they
Mhm.
sat listening to the story he told, they got the lesson. And then my grandmother was also an amazing storyteller. She had an incredible life story, and we would visit with her on Sundays, and there was no TV on. We sat and we talked and we listened and we learned and we heard about her whole life. And I'm actually working on a piece about that because her story is incredible. But then I also have my mom, who I remember when I was eating a bowl of Rice Krispies cereal, it Snap, Crackles, and Pops. She
Oh,
made up a whole story about Snap, Crackle, and Pop, and as I was eating breakfast, she was telling me the story, and every day there'd be a new installation of the story. So I come from storytellers, and I
uh,
think my aunt saved something that I wrote when I was in 4th or 5th grade. She gave it to me recently, and it
mhm,
was me personifying a baseball. And I put myself into the mind of the baseball and what it would feel like to get hit with a bat and soar into the outfield and all this stuff. So I guess I was always imaginative. I had several imaginary friends as a kid. I was always creative minded that way. But
mhm,
um, I think I really didn't understand that I could put stories together well until I was in high school, and I had a creative writing teacher, and he was like, "You really need to do more of this." And I was like,
mhm.
"You're a teenager and you're self-conscious and you don't really think you're good at anything." And he pushed me. He demanded more. He actually wrote my letter of recommendation for college, which was phenomenal. He pushed me to see what else I could do and to push the boundaries of. And I had sent him things even when I was in college, and he would write back and be like, "This is not good enough. This is not up to your standard." Like he was a harsh critic, but I
Uh-huh.
respected him for that. So, and I always was drawn to jingles and wordplay and rhymes and poetry and all that stuff. So I think I always just naturally gravitated toward it. So when it came time to choose a major in college, I was completely clueless. I went into college thinking I wanted to be an architect. Neither of my parents went to college. Nobody in my family went to college. So we just were blind to this whole process. And I did not have a good guidance counselor in high school. So when I got to college and I was looking for courses, I was like, "Where's architecture?" They're like, "We don't have architecture at this college." I was like, "What? You have to go to a special college for that?" Like, I didn't even know. It was so sad.
Oh,
So I changed majors multiple times and I landed in marketing, and
okay.
marketing tells stories, right? So I gravitated toward that. And over the years, as I've worked in corporations and so forth, I always come back to the storytelling for the psychology of it. I mean, I really like getting into the minds of the brand. I'm a chameleon. I can adapt really easily to different kinds of brands, different kinds of style guides, and so forth. But also, I like getting into the mind of the end user. What's going to motivate them? What do they really need? What are they looking for? What's going to solve the problem for them? And that's how I approach my corporate work. So when I
Mhm.
write stories, I think more like, what's going to make anybody care about this? What's going to make somebody relate to this character? What's going to make somebody feel something that they don't want the story to end because they don't want to let go of the people in the story? Because it's always about the people. It's never about the situation. It's always about the people dealing with the situation. And I think that's kind of just how life is. It's always about the people around you and how you all deal with life together. So that's my approach, I guess.
After listening to you in that just last little bit there, it makes me think that you're quite a people's person. You're quite empathetic to people. You like people to the point of view. You like to analyze them and, quite emotional with the right people that are around you. And so hence why you're always trying to learn how they tick,
Mhm.
um, how they move, how they think, and etc. It's not only for your storytelling, but it's just, I think it's your nature. And then it allows you to tell the story through your emotions, through them in a way. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and it's actually I'm very empathetic. I'm actually an
Mm.
introvert, um, but I'm like an extroverted introvert. Like I like being around people,
Okay.
but I get kind of exhausted by the energy sometimes because I can walk into a room and immediately pick up the vibe of the room. I recently had to go to a funeral of a friend's father who passed, and I was a disaster. Like I just could feel all that sadness, and I turned into the person needing the comfort rather than me comforting them. But
All right.
I also think that when you're very empathetic, it's almost hard to take a position on things because you can really see both sides of things. You can
Of course.
Life is never just one way or the other. It's
No.
always so gray. And
Mm.
when you're empathetic and you can look at an issue and you can see it from both sides perspectives, it's hard to draw a line of what you believe because you really can feel for both sides. So it's good and it's bad. But I do think when I'm writing, I try to put myself in the position of the reader. Like, and it makes me have to edit myself mercilessly. Like, oh my gosh, like, oh my god, I'm rambling on. Cut, 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 cut. Even if I love the sentence, cut it,
Yeah,
get rid of it. Nobody cares.
I get it. I
Yeah,
Well, it sounds like to me also you put yourself in a position where you don't judge. You sit on the fence with anything and everything.
yeah,
And with what you just said, and the reason why you do so is before the story comes along, I suppose there's certain things happening in your life that makes you understand, right? As you said, there is no black and white. There's in betweens and greys and whatever else, which what you
mhm,
just said. And that's quite a gift to have because there are many people out there that doesn't have the gift to be able to not judge. We all know that it's very easy looking from the outside in and making us think that this is the case. But who are we behind closed doors to know what's going on? And I think
exactly.
you've got that natural skill set to be empathetic and to sit on the fence. And I think that's what makes you a great storyteller too, because you can see both sides and then it gives you the flexibility to do use the both sides to tell the story that needs to be told for the end goal. Does that
And
make sense?
I think with characters too, sometimes you have villains with redeeming characteristics, or sometimes
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
good people who do bad things, and I think being able to add that dimension to a character or
Yeah,
even to reflect on it in yourself, there who doesn't make mistakes? Who doesn't screw up? Who doesn't think, "Oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that," or "I wish I wouldn't have said that," or so I really feel like you just have to tap into the humanity of it all, the humanness and the fact that we do all screw up, and sometimes a sorry is sufficient and sometimes it isn't, and
yeah,
there are regrets in interactions. People say, "Oh, I don't want to have any regrets." It's not really possible to live a full life without any regrets
yeah,
because nobody can do that well.
very well.
You can live in a bubble and but then you'd probably regret living in the bubble. So I just think that when it comes to, like, for example, memoir, I was working with a woman on her memoir, and her daughter had committed suicide because she was bullied terribly. And
Mhm.
I saw the woman speak somewhere, and I was so moved by her story that I approached her and I said, "I'd like to bring you to my town to speak. Would you be interested?" So that started a whole conversation. And ultimately, she did come to our town to speak. But in getting to know her, in order to set that up, I said to her, there's so much more to your story than just the fact that your daughter died. I would love to
Mhm.
help you tell it. And she thought about it for a bit and she's like, yeah, I would like you to help me tell it. But what ended up happening is in a memoir, you cannot paint yourself as the perfect person who never made a mistake. Everybody else is not always wrong.
Mm.
So that was, as we were drafting things, it's like, well, how did you mess up in the situation? And it gave her time to be like, how did I mess up in it? Because we like to be the hero in our own stories a lot of the time, and that doesn't make for good memoir. Your memoir needs to be more relatable because you're human and you definitely messed up. I guarantee you messed up. There's
Oh
no
yeah,
doubt in my mind. So I
yeah.
think that those stories are better, right?
I put up my hand. Definitely, we are human. We are not robots.
Absolutely, absolutely. Although I have to tell you, as a copywriter, the rise of the robots is kind of terrifying because the robots are great. AI is great at just like aggregating information and regurgitating it, but
Mhm,
there's no soul to it, and
mhm,
it's bothering me as a writer, as a creative person, because I'm seeing so much bland garbage that doesn't really have that human undertone to it. And
mhm, mhm.
part of me is glad for that because that gives writers, still a profession.
Yeah,
But on the other
gives you
hand,
hope.
I'm worried they'll iterate it to a point where maybe it gets better at that and they just, it's just going to be robot talking to robot all the time and we're just going to be
Well,
scrolling
the
Instagram.
no, you're totally right. I mean, the thing with AI and writing, I mean, it's really good at what it does. But the thing is that a lot of people they don't really use it in the way it needs to say it in your own tone, and even then, it's not great. So what's going to happen is everyone eventually is going to sound like each other, except for talented people like you and like myself that just wants to be just personable and just want to be ourselves. We don't care. We're just going to be ourselves. And give it another year or two. You're going to get a lot of people that are going to turn and want to be around people that are themselves because you get enough people using the same tool and the same software, they sound the same, and people are
Mhm,
going to get fed up with that. So for instance, with the podcasts, now you've got these AI voices that are doing these podcasts, and good luck to them, but let them do that for the next year or two. People are going to find it weird and wonderful, but after a while they sound the same. You need some uniqueness. You need to
mhm.
relate to a particular person, and if they all sound the same, then it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So, hence why I have no problems being myself. I make mistakes on the podcast. I make mistakes. I never edit them. They are what they are, and that's what makes them you touchable, personable, interesting. Taking all the ums and ahs out, taking all the spaces out. That doesn't sound right. That's not correct.
Mhm,
But by having something that's not perfect, not right, that makes it the right thing to do because that's what you do when you speak to a friend, right? That's the kind of situation you have,
mhm.
you know. But when you
And
start making things perfect,
that's what I hated so much about Instagram, where it was like, you know, try and make these 7-second reels and this, that, and the other. It was like you've taken you've taken all the thinking out. You've taken all the pausing and the breathing and the
that's right.
humanity out of it. It's just like bing, 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 bing. And
Yeah,
honestly, it is so bad for ADHD people. It's just like such a deluge of constant stimulation that it makes me like
totally,
right? I,
totally.
I feel like I have to go into a brain detox after that. And it's funny because I was just on TikTok the other day because the ban was coming and
Mhm,
Substack was incentivizing creators on
uh-huh,
Substack to try to bring
mhm,
over the
mhm,
disenfranchised. And I went in there and I was like, oh, after being off of all those platforms for the last 4 months or so, going
uh-huh,
back is so terrible for me. Like I was like, "Oh, I hate this," close, delete, and
right, right.
I'm noticing a lot of Substackers are getting rid of the other platforms because it's almost I think of Substack as the place where the grown-ups come.
I
And that's
agree with you.
right?
Intelligent conversation, which is what I would say.
And a deeper conversation. It's not
Yeah.
just surface level. It's not just, I don't know. I feel like all the Instagrams, it's window dressing. You never really get to the crux of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a problem with social media all my life. I've been on the internet now for over 20, well, more than that, about 30 years now. And I've always had an issue interacting with people on social media because I kind of find it quite fake.
Mhm.
I like a conversation. I like to sit down and speak to
Yep.
someone one to one, etc. Now I've always struggled until I came to Substack a few weeks ago, and I felt like I came home. I was reading, what was being said. I'm reading the articles, and it was more personable, more about someone's life and what they're going through and their
Mhm.
struggles,
Mhm.
and not trying to window dress it
Yep.
either.
Yep.
And that was amazing to me. So I felt like, oh my God, actually, this is a wonderful community,
Yeah.
and that gave me the inspiration to come here to really attack my issues that I have with writing, and it's going well. I've still got a long way to go. By all means, I'm not a great writer at all, but I'm still joining the journey, and I'm happy to be here. I don't feel like I'm jarring within the system. Does that make sense?
It totally does. It's become, I think, first of all, I know some people say that there are unpleasant people on Substack, but I haven't come across too many of them. I have found that in general, the community has been very supportive of each other,
Mm.
of art for art's sake, of people who are new to the platform, people who are posting for the first time. That is so scary. It is such an act of courage to push that post button because instantly you're vulnerable. Instantly it's out there.
Yeah,
Instantly
definitely.
you've opened
Yeah,
yourself up to criticism or whatever.
yeah.
And it's scary. So I have found Substack in general to be a more supportive place than any other online community that I know of. But I've also found that you don't have to be the best writer. You don't have to be a grammarian and you don't have to be crazed about all of that. And God knows I always have typos that I only see after I hit post. But
Aha! That
always,
happened to
it's
me today a few times. And also, when
right.
I sent you a message, I noticed a typo when I sent it to you too.
Always.
I'm always doing it. I'm always
Always.
doing it.
It's funny. My friend Irina and I, we we tell each other about our each other's typos because she said that's like telling people they have broccoli in their teeth. You have to do it. It's true. It's true. You can't help it. But I've
I
found
like it.
that on Substack, the story is more important than the punctuation.
Yeah,
It's more
it is.
about right? It's more about the meal than it is about the dish that it's put on. And I love that about it. It feels like more scrappy and more authentic to me than any place
Yeah,
else. So
yeah,
I just
yeah,
hope it never changes. God knows I don't want any ads or any nonsense. Like I'm one of those people that's like, "Oh, please don't screw this up. This is good."
yeah. Yeah. No, you're totally right. Yeah, no, just keep it as it is and just build in on what people need and want.
Right.
Listen to what the community wants, ask them what they want, and we'll get there. And now, listen, you spoke about ADHD. You notice that when people are scrolling within Instagram, it's quite jarring, which it is for me. I find it,
Mhm.
especially TikTok. Bang, bang, bang is from click from one to the other. Now, do you have ADHD at all, or your family,
No.
or let's talk about that. Let's have a chat because before you say something, I'm neurodivergent myself, and that's what I do to help clients. So I help neurodivergent clients simplify things and systems because I have problems.
Mhm.
I've been jarred. Hence why the podcast is to have entrepreneurs who are all neurodivergent or they're specialists to help.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to hear your take. Where do you come from when it comes to your neurodivergence, if you have it?
So it's funny because I never connected the dots like growing up. I never thought anything about always having a song in my mind or being a terrible sleeper or being disorganized or forgetting I had things if they weren't out in front of me and all the things until my daughter was diagnosed and I started learning so much about it. I was like, "Oh, this makes so much more sense now." So, technically, no, I am not diagnosed and I am not medicated, but I see so many of the things that she struggles with in myself. And whether that's time management or object permanence or, getting overwhelmed, like overstimulated,
Yeah.
I have a lot of those traits. And I think I've just naturally found workarounds and systems that work for myself. Like, for example, if I don't put a reminder on my phone every single day to pick my kid up from school, I will forget her.
Oh,
Guaranteed.
you terrible mother.
I'm terrible.
Really?
I'm the
I
worst.
bet you forgot that one time in your life too. You've done it once, haven't you? You have, haven't you?
Not only have I forgotten, but I have also sent my kid to school in pajamas thinking pajama day was that day
Oh,
when it was
oh
not for
dear.
another week.
Andrea, you are definitely neurodivergent. I like you already, so I'm not the only one that's flawed. I like that. So you sent her in her pajamas.
The only kid in the pajamas.
Oh my! I hope they were fashionable pajamas, and they. Please tell me they were decent pajamas, right?
It was a
Oh please.
onesie. It had horns.
Oh no, you did it, Andrea. You didn't. You didn't send her like that. You really didn't.
She's
How did she
scarred for
live it
life.
down for the rest of her? She never lived it. Did you change schools? You had to change schools, right? You had to change those schools.
We're in the
Tell
witness
me you did.
protection program now.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Oh my god.
Oh
Oh
my god.
my
There's been so many things like that. And, you know,
god.
they
Oh
have
my
no
god.
choice. They're stuck with me. What are they gonna do?
I love that. Ah,
But I will
wonderful.
say, my husband, he regrets not putting into the wedding vows that we would have a way to deal with the amount of paper that comes into our house.
What did your husband think at the day when you did that? What happened? Now tell me what that conversation was like. That actually, what was the first conversation? Did you make a call while he was at work, and how did that come along? What was the conversation? Tell
I
me.
tried to bribe my kid not to rat me out.
Oh, really? You made it
Totally ratted
worse.
me out at the first opportunity. She's like, "Dad, you're not gonna believe this, but Mom sent me to school in pajamas." Oh, it was bad. It was so bad. Oh, but you know what? My husband, God bless him, he is a steady six. Like, he is not high highs or low lows, and
Uh,
he's dealing with a lot of girls in this house, and we're all half crazy. So he's our steady Eddie.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I don't know how he does it, but yeah, the paper is a problem. I think it multiplies overnight. It's just unbelievable. And I have a shredder. You would think I would just like take it and shred it. No, no, I need to keep it out so I know where things are. Yeah, it's a problem.
Okay. Well, Scatty Mum, let's talk about that. So now you've had her diagnosed. You can see you're to blame for her diagnosis, right? So let's assume you are ADHD because you can see it in your daughter, and
Mhm.
obviously you can see it in loads of things that's happened. I've just heard one of probably 10,000 different things that's happened, right? So let's assume you have a diagnosis, and let's go right back until you can remember the furthest of your ADHD antics. How far back can you go that makes you think, aha, moment?
Hmm. That is a good question. I definitely remember, I was always jittery. I was always bouncing my knee, chewing on pen caps, always fidgeting, always. But I I remember not being able to focus on certain things because I was so preoccupied with other things. Like, I would get derailed where something would happen or someone would say something. And I would get so derailed that I just couldn't come back to what was in front of me. And that was probably, I guess, the first time I really noticed that was probably in junior high school.
Uh,
Um, but also, I think I was a very assertive kid. ADHD shows up differently in girls, where they tend to be chatterboxes or they tend to be overly assertive in group projects and things like that. And I definitely had some of that going on for sure because I remember when I was a kid, my stepfather would be like, "This before this," because I would just have no filter. It would just come right out. Um, so I do recall that. So that's probably somewhere around the age of 8 or 9. And then I remember the songs. Like, I have a soundtrack in my head all the time that is so maddening to me. Sometimes the songs are okay, but sometimes I can even have two songs going on at the same time. And that's a problem when I'm trying to write, inevitably I'll be like, okay, like I'll put on some binaural beats or I'll put on something that like drowns it out, maybe some classical music or something to just override what's happening in my mind all the time.
Uh,
But I will say, I think that the ADHD has helped me because I go through creative mania where I will have a day where I will be so hyper productive. I can come up with 80 different topics for things I want to write about. I can, bang out a ton of work, but then I alternatively may have a day where every sentence is a struggle. So, I kind of
oh,
have learned to ride the wave of how my mind works. And
mm,
on the days that everything's like firing on all pistons, I really buckle down because I know that that kind of inspiration is fleeting. So I think that that's interesting. But I also think that with my daughter,
mhm,
she's really smart and she did exceptionally well in school, and the battles we had to fight, she could not her s she was not allowed to have any kind of accommodations on
mm,
standardized testing. She's in college now. She was not allowed to have
mm,
any accommodations because her grades were too good, and it was so frustrating for me because she is diagnosed, and yet the school and the college board did not want to give her accommodations because she had great grades, but nobody talks about what it took for her to get those great grades, how
yeah,
much
so
longer it took her, how
yeah,
much harder it
yeah,
was for her, how many things she missed because she was so focused on getting that grade. And that was such a source of frustration for me because I lived with her going through that. I lived with
of course.
the time management issues and her being up until 1, 2 in the morning. And I was up too because any mom knows like you can't rest until the kids are like snug in the bed. And it was such a battle, and you know what, it all worked out. She's in college in the school she wanted, in the program she wanted, and that's all great, but it's unfortunate that, you know, just because you're an achiever, people just think it's easy, and it isn't. It isn't easy. It was harder for her. So, we'll see what happens longer term with her career, and she's very adamant about not having a career that's a desk job, and I understand that because she doesn't wanna sit still, she doesn't wanna be bored, her brain is always, you know? Unfortunately, she's gravitating toward writing, and I'm like, "No, don't do it. Be a
Why not?
scientist. Be a
Oh,
computer
she wants to be
programmer."
creative. I know, I know, I know, I know. But she'll find her way soon enough, and she obviously looks up to you, so that's partly why she wants to do what she wants to do, and that's a testament to you, right? She has a lot to look up to. As much as she's got a scatty mother, which is not a bad thing, she's got a mother that is very empathetic. Sits on the fence, that can listen to anybody, and she respects that. So part of that wants her to be part of you and to follow in your footsteps. And what a great testament, um, as a parent to have for a daughter, a child, to want to do that. You're blessed to be in that position, and rightly so, because you've worked hard to be a great mother, to be great parents, for them to want to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's such going through parenting kids is such an interesting situation, such a journey and an adventure, and it is nothing of how you think it's gonna go. And I've learned that you really have to parent the child you have versus trying to parent the child you expect, right? So, of course, I never even considered that my kid would have, executive dysfunction issues and things like that. But she did, and her friends did not. So, they were doing certain things and she wasn't able to accomplish the same thing in the same time, and it could have been like a big battle, and sometimes it was, honestly, because I'm like, "I get it. I'm like this too. If you just do
Yeah,
this, this, and this, it'll be easier." But,
yeah,
teenagers, they wanna fight you.
yeah.
But, I think she's getting to a point now that she'll be 19 tomorrow. I think she's getting to the point of thinking, "Oh, you weren't just trying to drive me crazy. You were actually trying to give me strategies."
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I get that.
I will
Okay,
be
so
I will be vindicated.
so we have an ADHD daughter, a beautiful ADHD daughter, and we have a beautiful ADHD mum. Now, what
Oh,
was it like? What was it like, both of you who are ADHD, similar with each other? You must have certain things, loggerheads. It couldn't have been easy at certain times, being very similar. Or did it make it easier because then it was easier for you to understand each other? Which was it?
It's actually kind of both because the things that you fight most in your children, I think, are the traits that you see in yourself, right? So I I like, for example, her being disorganized drives me crazy because I'm disorganized and I want her to be better, right? So it's like how many different ways would I go and reorganize her to try to help her overcome something that I struggle with, right? So there was that, but then there's also a side of her that like we just get each other. We have the same sense of humor. We
Uh-huh.
can crack up at I and evenings are the worst because she kind of comes alive after 10 p.m., which is terrible
Oh,
when you
did
have
she?
to get up early for school. But she gets like the zoomies at that time of day, and that's when all the puns occur to her, and she's making jokes, and we're cracking up about things, and we just have such a good time. And I miss her because now she lives far away because she's in college.
Uh,
But when she was home for the holidays, I can't tell you how many nights we laughed till we cried about things. And I didn't realize that, my younger daughter is more like my husband. Like she knows what she wants to do. She's organized. She's all those things. My
yeah.
older daughter is
Yeah.
like, so I sort of relate. I relate to them both, but I relate to my older daughter's chaos a little bit
Oh,
better than maybe
of
my husband
course.
does because he's not chaotic. So the poor
Yeah.
guy got two of us. I feel bad for him, but
So
it
what
was
does he think? How does the husband cope then? What does he think of both of you really? I know he loves you both, but really, what does he say and how does he deal with it all?
there is a lot of head shaking. There is a lot of consideration of putting electricity out in the shed so he can go hide from us.
Oh really? Oh my days. Oh God, it's that
He spends a lot of time with the dog.
bad. Really? Oh my days. Okay, give us a for instance, just before he goes in that shed and think I've had enough. Give me a
Hmm.
situation that made him think, oh, I've got to get into that shed. I'm sorry, I've got to leave you. I've got to leave you.
Let me think about a situation recently. Um, well, there might have been the time recently when she came home and she brought home one suitcase, but then wanted to go back to school with two. And in trying to fit all the different things in the suitcases, her room exploded. And he walked by, did a double take, pointed at me, and was like, not it. Because the stuff was everywhere. And she goes to school in South Carolina, so she doesn't really need, heavy clothes and winter boots and things like that.
Yeah,
But she hasn't wrapped her mind around that yet because she's just a freshman. So she brought everything with her, and we're at the airport, biting our nails to see if the weight is going to be right on the luggage. And the whole
yeah.
time he's muttering and mumbling, "I'm not. If it doesn't fit, I'm throwing it out. I'm throwing it out. If it's overweight, I'm not paying for it." It's
Oh,
always an adventure.
well, to me, it seems like you have a wonderful family life. I mean, at the end of the day, family life is supposed to be dynamic, right?
It is
Um, they're
dynamic.
supposed to they're supposed to create memories, just like you're smiling about it now, and we're talking about how he copes and whatever else. And at the time, all right, it's a bit stressful for him, but I know, he thinks to himself and he laughs to himself and think, oh God, I got that's crazy. But I would never change them, So it sounds like you have a wonderful life and you've got a wonderful family. Yeah, it is a bit of a roller coaster up and down, but it's your roller coaster and it's the one that you wouldn't change. You know?
Absolutely. And you know what? I My father died young, and I think about it a lot because he died when he was 59 and I'm 51, and that gap keeps getting smaller and
Oh,
smaller. And
hold on, stop, stop, stop. He died at what age?
59,
And what age are you?
51.
Now, listeners who are listening to the podcast, She looks nowhere near 51. I'm telling you, no. And she's laughing now, but she gets this all the time. She goes out and she gets this all the time. People do not say, "Oh, yeah, you look like 51." Yes, Andrea, you get this all the time. Everybody goes, "Are you
It's
what?"
smoke and mirrors. It's lighting. It's the
Yeah.
magic of TV.
she's she's doing something. What is it? Well, okay. What magic thing are you taking for you to look like? I tell you what, she looks like she's in her late 30s.
Oh,
Honestly.
listen, we're gonna be good friends.
I'm telling you, she's lying to me. She just wants me to give her, she wants that big head, doesn't she? Yeah, yeah, I'm
I'm good
51 when
from
she's ready
far, but far from good.
Oh, did you hear that? But anyway, we digress. All right, so let's go back. You was talking about your grandfather.
So my father died young, and I tend to. So I have an app on my phone. It's called We Croak. It's
Uh-huh.
extremely morbid. It reminds you 5 times a day that you're gonna die. And I know that sounds dark, but it helps keep it in perspective for me that this is all just
Mhm.
this is all just temporary. Everything is temporary. The good is temporary, the bad is temporary. You
Mm,
can't get so bent out of shape over things that won't matter in 100 years. No one will
yeah.
know. No one will care. So I when I turned 50, I kind of had a moment where I was like, I have all these stories in me. I have all these books in me. I have all these ideas in me. And I am 50 and I have backburnered them for so long. And I've said, oh, someday, when the kids are older, someday when we're not on the sports sideline, someday when work calms down, someday. My dad didn't get to someday, right? So I don't know how much time is on my timeline, and so I just felt like I have to just go for it. And so I am extremely grateful
Mm,
every day that I wake up feeling okay and that my family is okay and that we're all just doing our thing. Like how blessed are you to wake up not in pain or not cold or not hungry or what, like we
yeah,
lose sight of so much of the fundamental things that make the
of
human experience
course.
bearable, that
Yeah,
all the rest is so silly. It's so silly. So I try to keep that in mind. And with 5 daily reminders that I'm going to die, it's pretty easy to be like, all right, we're just going to do the thing that scares us because why not? So I just encourage people to stop back burnering everything in their life. My father always said, I'll do it when I retire or someday or this or that. He
yeah,
retired at 59, and he
yeah,
was sick
exactly.
by the time he
Yeah,
was 56. So
yeah,
he didn't ever get to do all those things, and he had so much potential. He was a talented musician, and he could have done something with this stuff, but it just, you just always expect to have the time to do it, and he didn't. And you know what? None of us know, so all of us need to just do the things and be grateful for our family and grateful for our life every single day.
yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, and it seems like you have a lot of gratitude. You start your day with gratitude just to remind you about the important things in life. So you don't start the day on a downer. You start the day on a high, knowing that it's a new day. Yeah, yesterday may have been iffy, it may not have been right, but at least it's a new day. It's a fresh start, and I go forward. So, saying that, how do you start your day to be consistent and try to make sure you're in a positive state of mind? And what do you do to
So
be able
my
to do it?
my day, as much as I would like to say that I get up at 5 in the morning and go to the gym and do all those things, I do not. Especially in the winter, it's cold, it's dark, and I'm just not motivated for that. But I do. I write early in the morning. That's as soon as I drop my daughter off at school. I come home, pour a cup of coffee, and I start writing because I find that that's when my brain is most fresh. And I also
Mhm.
find that is the least likely time for me to be distracted by anyone who wants my attention, whether that is, a client or a family member or a telemarketer or a doctor's appointment or whatever. So I try to start strong and I write 4 to 5 days a week, and I try
Mhm.
to be consistent with that. Now that I have two publications, I don't have as much time to write 5 pieces for each of them, obviously.
Uh,
But I am trying to be consistent with that, and I do put my Substack work ahead of everything else at this point. My client
mhm,
might not love that, but I know that, you know, I want to fill my cup with a thing that I enjoy and I like first. Like that's I've always done it in reverse. And because I've done it in reverse, the stuff that I've wanted to do always got backburnered. So now I've decided, nope, I'm going to do the thing that I want to do first. And then I will find time everywhere else in my day and in my life. And if it has to be late nights or weekends, I will still do the work, the paid work, the client work, and such. But I need to commit to a very regimented schedule, or else I won't do it. I'll put it in the
mm.
someday category, and I don't want it to live there. I want it to be happening now.
So you make sure you do things in such a way that you don't overwhelm yourself. So there was a time that you had a system in place that was quite overwhelming, and then you
Oh,
took a
yes.
back seat and you thought, I've got to live life in a specific way, and then you structure your day in such a way that you're not overwhelmed, and you structure certain days, especially when you're having bad days, you know when to pull back a bit and
Mhm.
just put certain systems, certain ways of things that you do. So you've got that down to a fine tea. Of course, it's never perfect, but you got to a stage where to handle your ADHD, you know what you can and cannot do. So you don't let anybody dictate to you and push you in a corner, whether it's a client or whatever, because you know for you to be prevalent and for you to be, how can I say, efficient
Mhm.
and mindful, you have to do things in a particular way. Is that correct, me saying that?
It is, but it's also that I have committed to only doing one thing per day for
Uh-huh.
my family. So, for example, um, if I need to make doctor's appointments or deal with insurance companies or call a plumber or whatever, there's one thing a day. I do one thing a day because the list is always forever. It's always so long. But it's
Mhm.
overwhelming if I try to do 5 things a day because inevitably that one phone call to the insurance company will take 45 minutes. And if I try to do 3 things like that, it will eat up my day and I'll never get to the things that are important to me.
Okay.
So there's 4 people in my family and I'm only one of them, so I can take on one thing per day. So get in my queue. If you need me to call to speak about a study abroad trip to some advisor, that's the one thing for the day. If you need me to find out what's going on with, your sports tryouts, that's the one thing for the day. But I just can't do all of the things. And I find that, for example, if I have a doctor's appointment, I have to schedule that early in the day because if I don't, then the anticipation of having that appointment down the line messes up my productivity for the whole day. Like I'm better off having an 8 a.m. doctor's appointment than I am having a 2 p.m. doctor's appointment any day of the
Ah,
week. It
I
just
see.
is how I work.
So you know your limits, you know the limits, and you
Hmm.
know how you can get quite intense,
Yep.
which is great. So, with that said, what would you say to the listeners, especially if they are ADHD and overwhelmed? And I'm sure you see a lot of it going around when you're in Substack and elsewhere. What would you that one thing, if you had to give that one advice, what would you give advice to them and say, what was that piece of gold be?
I think I look at Substack as the 3 C's for me. So it's creativity, community, and collaboration, right? So those
Uh,
are the 3 C's that I see Substack as really being a great complement to. I think if people, neurodivergent people want to be successful on Substack, they have to
uh,
set boundaries. That you need boundaries around your time and around your own expectations of yourself. So I I think we're really too hard on ourselves and we have these like for example New Year's resolutions. It's just such an exercise in disappointment. You're just going to disappoint yourself instead of putting so much weight on the completion of something. I feel like we need to reward ourselves for the habits that help us get to the completion. So
uh,
For example, I like to write every morning, and at 11 o'clock, I'm done, and then I do my other work or whatever, and that's my hard out. So whatever I can get done between 8 and 11, that's for me, and then the rest
Hmm.
of the day is whatever other responsibilities I have. And I think that if you make sure you fit yourself into your priority list and you create really tight boundaries around that are immutable, shut your phone off, unplug your phone, put your computer on airplane mode if you need to. Protect that time. That way you have that time. You do that for a couple of weeks in a row, it becomes such a habit that you feel like something's missing if you don't have that. And I think that's really important. I think the structure is so important, so you don't have time to think yourself out of it. You need the structure. I need the structure. I've
Hmm.
always kind of revolted with the structure. Like, I've always been like, I don't need structure. Yes,
Uh-huh.
you need
I'm glad
structure.
you say that. I'm glad you're talking about that because actually I've come to a realization, and I do it for everybody else. I've been helping everybody else with structure and processing and whatever else. But for me, I never put a plan in place, right? I never put structure in place. And I think to myself, but you need it.
Mhm.
You're very intelligent and everything else, but you have to have that plan. You have to have that structure,
You do.
especially how scatty I can be, like I've got
Mhm.
memory of a goldfish and everything else. But if I don't have anything to reference, then it's just chaos.
Yes.
Um, you know, so I've decided recently to be my own client. What would I say to my
Great.
client? What would I say to a person? Which is what I always say. And I think you have to, especially when you're ADHD, you're dyslexic or whatever, we have to have some kind of structure. Otherwise, what happens? We end up floating in the ethos, right?
Yes.
And then when you look back, you go, hold on, I'm in the wrong direction.
Yep.
Um, yeah, exactly. And I think it's very important to have that structure. So, with that said, how can people contact you, whether in Substack or elsewhere? Is there how do would you like people to contact you if they need your services if they
Oh,
need to
yeah.
speak? Sure.
They can always get a hold of me in Substack, and I would love for them to come on in and join the What Are the Chances community, because we have a lot of fun in there. And if they ever want to get a hold of me for, writing services or anything like that, they can always email me. My email address is the numeral one way to email Andrea at gmail.com. It's very simple. It's very easy to remember. One, the numeral, way to email Andrea at gmail.com. So I set that up because my last name is Hoffman with a double F and a double N. And
Uh-huh.
you would be amazed how many people lose my second N. So I can't really use my full name because it gets misspelled so many times. So one way to email Andrea is the way to do it.
And just one thing before we finish off. Now, you obviously have the clients one to one, all right? But do you also do groups and do you also do it from a corporate? I mean, what's the structure of your business? How do you help people? Do you do it in multiple ways or just literally just one to one?
So what I've been doing forever is I work with clients one to one, whether they need consulting or direct copywriting, or just help refining their tone and their voice and their brand voice. So I definitely do that, but I actually am considering doing some workshops on Substack to help people get their stories together, and that's something that I'm working out right now. So I'm actually really, really excited about that because I've never conducted like a creative writing workshop like that,
Uh,
but I really feel called to do that because, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I really want to help people tell their stories. And I really think the first step in helping them tell their stories is helping them find their stories. So that's definitely something that's coming down the line here. Super excited about that. And also, in my Can We Talk About This community, we're going to be doing a lot of Zoom calls and ways to connect on a more interpersonal level, because that really, although it's a publication, I really want to build that into a community where people feel able to come in there
mm,
and know who's in there and have resources, direct one-to-one resources, whether it's with me or with anyone in the
yeah.
community, that they can really talk to, connect with, and feel like they're not going through any of this alone. So yeah,
No,
totally
no, I
different.
totally right. No, those type of calls, they make it the connection. I wish they would add that into Substack. Maybe they'll do that 1 year, but yeah, something like that is it's
Hmm.
nice when you can see people's faces, you interact with
Agreed.
each other. That's takes it to another level, right? So
Definitely.
that totally makes sense. So well, listeners, as you can hear, she's had a most amazing journey. The story whisperer teller. Yeah, she's been doing this since a child. You can see why she has so much empathy. You can see why she can write in so many different directions because she sits on the fence. And the story tells it all, as well as her gift to write. So if she resonates with you, it makes sense. You know it does. Contact her, have that conversation. All you've got to lose is time itself. Don't miss out. Andrea, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I hope we get to keep connecting going forward, and I wish you all sorts of luck with your writing. And if you ever need an ear, I'm here for you.
Oh, definitely. I need a lot of help with my writing, but I will do it. I will, and I will speak to you, Andrea, for sure. There's no two ways about it. And listeners, like, subscribe, and all those wonderful things. And sayonara.
Take care.
Take care.